Gets you talking.
Welcome into You and the Law on 938 Live. I'm Keith D'Souza. It's a Saturday morning, and of course, we are dealing all things legal, but not so legalistic today. We're talking about mediation, why companies, corporates might want to consider this form of, for lack of a better word, litigation to solve their disputes, and why mediation is becoming more important in the corporate and personal realm in Singapore. We're joined today by Dana Grossman. She is the senior mediator and the director at MeD8 Singapore. And of course, MeD8 is MED8. Dana, welcome into the program and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Dana, let's talk about you first and foremost. How did you get into mediation?
I started by being a lawyer, criminal lawyer in Israel. And I think it's a matter of personality. I believe in talking, in communication. So I believe you can reach a better solution or agreement for everything in life via talking and trying to get to a mutual base. So I left the litigation and I moved into mediation, and it was perfect. I had a family member who actually introduced me to it, and ever since, in the last 8 years, I've been doing it.
Now, being a mediator is walking the thin line, trying to get a win-win solution for both sides of the fence. How successful is mediation now that you're practicing in Singapore? In Singapore, are we seeing more people going for mediation rather than litigation?
Yeah. Basically, if you look at the statistic that the Singapore Mediation Center has done here, we're talking about roughly 85, 84, something like that, percentage of success. More and more people are going to mediation. It's not yet there. I think there is lack of information about what mediation is, what the benefits are. And most important, we have to deal with misconception. People, when you tell them, do you know what mediation is? They tell you, oh yeah, of course, it's about compromising. Now I see why they're saying it, but it's not that correct. It's not about compromising. It's about bringing your own issue to the table. And then when you have two parties, there are always two sides to the coins, right? But by having a neutral third party that help you facilitate and look at the real interest behind your option, your opinions, then you could bring to the table real issues to discuss and to negotiate. So mediation basically is about finding the best solution for your needs, not about compromising. It's not about 50-50. It occurred to me that people came to the table with $2 million issue, right? They have $2 million between them. Now, if they would have believed that they'll have to give up $1 million, I don't think I would meet them. They would definitely go to court. But because they already understood what mediation was all about, they came to the table and they ended up leaving the same sum on the table, but reaching a better agreement of how to pay, what to give in return, to understand why it happened, to prevent it for the future, to maintain the relationship. Because when you have a customer or a client, you will do everything you can in order to preserve him as a client, right?
Right.
So the 2 million became smaller. They also broke it into installment, but it wasn't about one and one. It wasn't about going to the middle. So that's what we're facing today. People are more aware. We have more companies that deal with mediation. My company was established in order to face those challenges. And we're trying to educate more people to know what the benefits and to give it a try.
Being a regional business center, I'm assuming that more and more people would avail themselves of mediation services rather than heading to the courts, which we are told can be a very costly process. But let's deal with, before we deal with the corporate part of it, when we talk about mediation to the layman, it's probably, they feel that, it's mediation between neighbors. What's what we hear about in the papers? It's my neighbor who I feel is causing a ruckus, and the other neighbor says, no, I'm not doing it. And that is what mediation is, and perhaps getting a reasonable solution to both sides. Have you found that? I know you started out doing the corporate part. Are more and more personal mediation disputes landing on your plate?
Yes. Most of our friends or colleagues, they come to me with with problems and challenges that they're facing, because that's what we do in a daily life, you're meeting people, you're talking to people. So because that's the nature of our daily life, we do end up with disputes or misunderstanding very often. So yes, I have friends that have difficulties with their neighbors, or challenges with hours of playing music somewhere, or having the door barking in the middle of the night. And yes, mediation is definitely the best solution for, for talking and reaching a better agreement. Think of yourself being a child. You would fight with your brother or your sister, and then most likely you would go to someone neutral to help you solve the dispute. Now, mom and dad not necessarily are neutral, but an elder brother or a friend that everybody likes and respects could have facilitated for you. And that's what we do. We don't make a decision for the parties, and we definitely avoiding from judging anybody. It's not about who's wrong and who's right. It's about taking both sides, trying to see where they're coming from, trying to understand the other party, why they chose to act the way they act, and to take it into consideration, reaching an agreement. So when my friends are telling me about their dispute, I'm trying to give them advice how to analyze it again, to look at the other side, to try to get into his shoes, to understand what bothers him. Because when you understand the other needs, then it's easier for you to actually to come up with a solution. Sometimes it's work. I believe that everybody can do it themselves. But if the other party is difficult, or you find yourself in difficulties, then yes, look for mediation. Yep.
Before we deal with mediation and what makes a good mediator and how you become a mediator, you worked or you've volunteered at the Singapore Mediation Center for about 3 years now, and you work, that is your primary professional occupation. You mediate between corporates. Have you found that the Asian client or the Asian disputee is a little bit more reticent than those you have experienced overseas?
There are differences. And for me, it's amazing. It's a process, I'm learning while I'm walking. It's a beautiful process. There are main differences about the dispute that I had in Israel and overseas compared to the people that I'm helping here in Singapore. Because I'm mediating at the courts, at the subordinate courts, and sometimes at the Supreme Court. And I find it that the Asian people that I have that are coming to ask for help and to get our facilitation it takes them a bit longer to share their emotions. And it takes maybe a bit longer to be able to apologize. It's difficult, and I respect that. Coming from a different culture, I'm trying to learn and to observe instead of imposing anything. In Israel, it was, for people, it's almost too easy to share their emotions. So they can go all over the place, and then you have to calm them down and to bring them back to the discussion. And it's easier for them to apologize. And sometimes it's all about saying sorry and accepting the responsibility of yourself over the situation, because it takes two to tango, for the best and for the worst. So if there's a dispute, you definitely contributed something. I'm not saying that there's someone to blame. On the contrary, two people brought a situation to occur. So now try to look what you could have done differently to prevent it from happening. And by doing that, you actually take responsibility. And then the other party sees that as well. And it brings them to a mutual respect and mutual surface to go forward. So yes, it is more challenging for me, because coming from this culture, for me, it's easy to share emotion. And I'm trying to keep it, to a simple.
Does face play a part in Singapore?
Definitely. Look, definitely. Face plays a big part. We all know that. I'm learning as well. Yes, and if someone comes to a dispute after somebody gave him face already, it is possible, but it takes a long time, and a private session, it takes a long time to dissolve it, and to melt the tension and the insult. And the other party has to take action as well.
It's almost like being a social worker, being a mediator, isn't it, Dana? We are speaking today with Dana Grossman. Dana is the senior mediator and, of course, the director of MeD8 in Singapore. You're listening to You and the Law. I'm Keith D'Souza. We'll be back.